Okay, so sorry we were interrupted for a second. Let's continue to talk about Joseph. I think Joseph had a typical reaction when you hear that the person that you're engaged to is pregnant and you know that you haven't been together. You would probably want to dismiss her, right? And that's exactly what Joseph wanted to do. In that day, though, if a woman was found to be cheating on somebody, they could be put to death. And that is very serious in that culture. Joseph, however, he wanted to quietly just dismiss her and, not put her to death, not publicly shame her. So right there it shows you that Joseph was a good man. And then Joseph was also visited by an angel that very next night. And there's something strong about these angels that change people's minds. And this dream that Joseph had said, take Mary, because she's going to, give birth to the Son of God, and you're to take her. So Joseph had to be very strong and go against the rest of the culture and take this woman and really trust in what God was doing. So Joseph was really an amazing part of this Christmas story, and without his help, it may not have ended up the same way. So he's a big character. So I think the lesson we learned from Joseph is to trust in God's word and to treat each other fairly. A couple other important parts of the Christmas story are the shepherds. I think the shepherds play a huge role. Now, why would God trust the shepherds to play a huge role? Because at that time, shepherds were the people who could not get any other type of job. They could not find anything for them, so they said, okay, you go, just travel with the sheep, keep taking them to new pastures and make sure that wolves don't, fight off wolves if they come get them. That's your only job. And it was the lowest of the low. They had to eat with the sheep, sleep with the sheep. There was really no other job that was really worse at that time. And isn't it strange that God picks the shepherds to be the first to hear about Jesus being born? After Jesus was born, the angels came to the shepherds in the field and told them first to share the good news. Although I shouldn't be surprised, because time and time again in the Bible, God does strange things. He will pick the lowest of the lowly people to share his message. He doesn't care about the hierarchy of the special people, the kings, the rich people. He treats everyone the same. Sometimes he'll use rich people, sometimes he'll use poor people. In this case, he used the poorest of the poor to get the first news of the good news of Jesus being born. So, again, I think that just tells you about the fairness of God. And he came not just for certain people, he came for everyone. So I think that's an important part of the Bible story. And the last part is the wise men. Some people call them wise men. Some people call them three kings. We sing some songs talking about three kings. They probably weren't kings. More than likely they were astronomers, which back then were basically scientists who studied the stars. And these people more than likely were from the East. So that's why we hear sometimes in songs, the three kings of Orient. The Orient meaning kind of from, the Japan, just east of the Japan area. The east part of the Middle East, I guess. Anyway, these people saw a star that was unlike any star that they've ever seen in all their years of study. And there are actually some reports that there was an astrological aberration, like something strange that they'd never seen before, recorded back around 3 or 4 BC on our calendars now. So
when BC?
About 3 or 4 years before Christ, which is about when some people think now that's probably about when Christ was born. More than likely, though, and it doesn't say in the Bible that they were there at the stable during the time of Jesus' birth. More than likely, it was probably 2 or 3 years by the time they got there. And their first visit was not to visit Jesus. It was to visit the king, King Herod at the time. And King Herod was a little crazy. He was known for being kind of a crazy ruler, a crazy king. He was mentally unstable and would do very horrific things to people. So when the wise men came, he was very worried because the wise men asked, I heard there's a new king, and King Herod said, "What new king? I'm the king. Who's this new king? Tell me more about him." And they said, "Yes, the star that we saw signifies that there's a new king that was born. Can you tell me where he was born?" And Herod freaks out. He actually orders anyone under 3 years old, because they told him it happened sometime in the last 3 years, any boys under 3 years old to be killed. Luckily, the wise men got out and found Jesus, gave him the gifts, and warned Mary and Joseph that they were looking for any boys under 3 years old and they were going to kill them. And luckily, Mary and Joseph got out of town just in time, and they actually went back to Egypt to kind of escape that area, so that they wouldn't be harmed. And then they moved back, several years later after it was safe and King Herod had died. And I'm sure you would have, especially you, Jeff, would have a lot of questions about what happened. We'd probably take a whole hour, and maybe we can take an hour next year talking more about that. But that's the gist of the story. And I guess the moral of the story, or the take that you can take from that, is that the wise men they came bearing gifts, and they came recognizing that Jesus was king. And at that time, no one recognized him as the king. So it took several years again. Jesus didn't start his ministry until he was about 30 years old, even though he was going to bring about change like the world had never seen at that time. So, if you have any questions on this, just email me, and we can kind of have an email discussion. It won't be as much fun as in person, but I'm glad that you took time to kind of listen to more about our Bible study. Godspeed.